Here's a radio I picked up at the flea market today, probably a late 50s Arvin twin speaker AM tube radio in a turquoise plastic case. You don't really see these colored radios very often, and when I say colored I mean ones besides black or white or brown, and when the colored ones do show up they usually want a premium price for them. So when this one showed up for under 20 bucks, I jumped on it. It needs to be cleaned up, has a few little scratches and whatnot in the case, but no cracks or no pieces busted out. Have no idea what this thing does, so let's turn it on and see if it works or blows up. Let it warm up a minute. Okay, it sounds like we have a bad electrolytic capacitor. No surprise there. And no reception. So let's open this joker up and see if we can determine what is going on with it. Okay, here's the chassis. And the first order of business is to get rid of that nasty electrolytic filter capacitor hum. So we'll go ahead and replace that capacitor now. Besides that, I really don't see any other capacitors that need attention. Everything else is either ceramic disc or we have a couplet back here for the audio circuit. So like I said, this multi-section electrolytic is really the only one we have to worry about. Okay, here we are with the filter capacitors replaced and powered up, and we got rid of that nasty hum, but we still have no reception. I mean, oh dear, what could the matter be? I mean, all these guys that talk about all you have to do is replace the capacitors in these old sets and they'll just spring back to life. I mean, what could be going on here? Well, this just once again proves that capacitors are not the be-all, end-all. So, let's determine what's wrong with this set. I'm betting it's in the audio circuit, because all we're getting is a very low-level hum, no matter the volume control setting. Okay, we'll now make some voltage measurements, starting at the 50C5 audio output tube. I'll measure the plate voltage, screen grid voltage, cathode voltage, and control grid voltage, and I'll report back when I find something that doesn't look right. Okay, the audio trouble turned out to be a cold solder joint on the cathode pin of the audio output tube socket, and I don't know how well it's showing up on the camera, but the circuit board is kind of crusty under the output tube and the rectifier tube, the two hottest tubes in the set. And that's a reason why I really don't think tubes and PC boards should be in the same enclosure. Well, we now have audio now, and when I first fired it up it sounded like we were trying to get some reception, but then that went away, probably due to other bad solder connections here. Okay, we actually are getting a little reception with the volume turned all the way up. But as you can hear, it's not nearly what it should be. Okay, what's happening is at power up, it's coming in strong, and then after about 5 seconds it fades out to nothing, which I will demonstrate when the set warms up.
There's no Supreme Court ruling. In other words, there's no precedent binding him to do this. He is electing to do.
Yeah, you can hear what's going on there. Now, that could be caused by any stage of the radio.
He wants to get reelected.
Now, our job is to find out what stage is causing the problem and correct it. Unfortunately, I believe our first IF transformer is the culprit due to the failing silver mica capacitors. When it works, when you turn it on and everything's fine, we have a negative voltage at the control grid of the IF amplifier tube. but the second things start acting up, this voltage goes positive, and I start getting the little bit of a static effect, like when these capacitors fail. I'll see if I can demonstrate that. Okay, it's going to be kind of fun, but pay attention to the meter as it warms up. See a negative voltage.
In Cornelia, Georgia.
You see what it does once it starts acting up? It starts going positive on us. And the longer it stays on, the voltage goes more positive. So, I believe an IF transformer rebuild is in our future here. And once you get the IF transformer out and have everything exposed, you really need to determine what value the capacitors are, and that information is usually not given in the schematic. A lot of guys go with 100 picofarad for the standard value, but I've determined that the actual value of the capacitor can vary greatly. So what I have done here, I carefully disconnected one side of the winding, and then I've measured our capacitance across the capacitor with the winding disc, and I'm getting about 146 picofarads, so we'll have to order a couple of capacitors that are as close to that value as possible. Okay, I've disabled the internal mica capacitors, and we almost had an accident because the whole base broke as I was trying to take it apart, so super glue came in handy here. Now we'll put it all back together and mount the outboard capacitors and hope it works. And here are the capacitors in place. We didn't have 140 whatever picofarad, but we had 100 picofarad and a 47 picofarad, so we just paralleled the two values together to give us around 150 picofarads, so that should work just as well. Not the neatest thing in the world, but since these IF transformers are no longer made and new old stock ones often develop the same problems, this is likely going to be our only option to fix these things. Well, I shouldn't say that until we plug it up and make sure it actually works.
Business that I gave you about job growth, which is obvious.
Well, I guess I did something right.
I want to own a
playing.
computer.
Well, the most compelling time. The idea
yeah,
is
it's been on about 30 minutes and no fade out or static, so I guess that problem's taken care of.
Another person typing at another
Now, I imagine your next question is going to be, are you going to do the second IF transformer? Well, the answer is no. As long as the silver doesn't decide to migrate, we're going to leave it alone.
Cannot tell that.
And I thought for being on the road, first time playing at dusk in this park.
Thank you to everyone.
So I guess all that's left is to replace the burned out dial bulb, which I don't have. It's one of those goofy types, and touch up the alignment, and this thing should be ready to go. And here's the dial bulb. I don't remember the number right offhand. I know GE used this same bulb in many of their radios from the same time period. And I believe this is a 1960 model here, in case I forgot to mention it earlier, judging by date codes I found on the tubes. Okay, we have the signal generator connected to the control grid of the mixer tube. Signal generator set to the IF frequency of 455 kilocycles. We have our output, just barely enough to produce a usable signal. And yes, this thing is out of alignment, because whenever I hear that, so it's not, the IF in this radio is currently not tuned to 455 kilocycles. Now we'll take our diddle stick and tune the cores of the IF transformers for maximum output. There's that one. Oh yeah. Cut the input down, or should I say the output of the signal generator. And that looks like that about does it. And I also peeked out the oscillator and RF trimmer on the tuning capacitor, which really wasn't that bad off. It was, the only thing really that off was the IF transformer that I rebuilt.
Time Gospel Radio, playing all your gospel favorites.
Primary candidate.
This is interesting, an AM station playing Led Zeppelin. I'm going to have to listen to this for a while and see where it's coming from. Okay, this is some Spanish-speaking station, likely out of Mexico or Cuba.
University law professor.
Okay,
and for
here we go. That ought to do it.
Delinquents are walking up killing people. And
Yeah,
we don't want a juvenile.
The juvenile detention center is y'all's.
I attempted to find this bulb on the sites, the mail order sites that cater to the antique radio community, and this bulb was not listed. So I went down to the local parts house, and they were like, "Oh, if you need to have the number. If you don't have the number, we can't help you." Well, no, I don't have the number. All I can tell you, it's a 6.3 volt, 150 milliamp bulb. Well, in the old days, you could take this to the parts house, and they'd actually search and find what you needed. But different world today. Well, out of disgust, I sort of made a little hack repair concerning the bulb. I took a number 47 standard dial bulb and soldered leads to the end of it and soldered it in place. As you can see here, I normally don't like doing things that way, but sometimes I just get disgusted and do it anyway. And it still works.
Listen, all this is true? Absolutely.
Then you...
Tune in to Sunday Night Gospel with Reverend Peter Bogan. All gospel classics and all by your request. Sunday night, 6 to 10 on the legendary 1290 WNBN.
Okay, that about does it. 1960 Arvin Radio back working again. Hope you got something out of all of this, and more to come later.